You're listening to the We're Talkin' Sports podcast, hosted by Ben Burns and Richie Donnell. Remember to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and visit our website at mysportstop.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Ben Burns and Richie Donnell.
All right, everybody, welcome to another wonderful episode of We're Talkin' Sports.
Yes.
The whole gang's here.
Yep.
Richie and Brett.
Yep.
And we're going to have a pretty good episode. We're running against the clock because at the time we're recording this, it's about an hour before the Packers-Eagles game.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Well, let's get going. Let's do this.
Yeah,
it's going to be a good one.
But first, I would like to say thankful for both of you for doing this show. For a happy Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It's a little late, but...
all right, I wasn't expecting that. But.
All right. Well, hey, surprises are good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so starting off, I was looking at an article today. Baseball has already been eliminated from the Olympics. It's been kind of on the border about whether it's going to be brought back or not in the future. And now there's talks about this possibly being the last World Baseball Classic.
Okay.
And obviously baseball has been called America's game for forever, and that's obviously changing with the popularity of football. But realistically speaking, is baseball a dying sport that now we're starting to get into these lasts of the World Baseball Classic being a world event and it being out of the Olympics, being a world event? Is this just an American thing, or?
I'm going to let Brett take that because he's a bigger baseball fan.
Well, I believe it is secured back in the Olympics for 2020.
Okay.
In Japan.
Because it's in Japan, yeah.
As for the World Baseball Classic, the reason that I read, because after you sent out what we were going to do, I didn't realize they were talking about this being the last one, and they said it's because the MLB doesn't want to shell out money for something that's not making money, which I understand, but at the same time, when you have teams like Israel and Korea,
right,
who nobody really cared. Why are you playing those games? Yes, they're playing those games in Korea, which, yes, that can help, but if it's not Korea playing, you're not going to have that many fans, and that's the problem with the World Baseball Classic is unless you host it, like when they play in the U.S. and they have like the final round there and they have some of the pool rounds there, there'll be a good amount of fans. I mean, it's right before the beginning of the season, right about middle of spring training, so people that love baseball will go to these games, but it's just a hard thing to sell in other countries.
Yeah. Well, and, as you mentioned with the 2020 Olympics being in Japan, it's one of those things now that I think believe it's new, where the host country can add or subtract so many a certain number of sports that they think that they could be relatively good at.
Right.
And with it being in Japan is very good at baseball. They send a number of players to, Major League Baseball every year. That I can see it being added, but yeah, I'm kind of with MLB on that, but it's crazy to think that 10 years ago, I mean, baseball was both in the Olympics and you had the World Baseball Classic every 2 years. And now, not only on top of the last World Baseball Classic, but we could have a lockout on our hands, too, in the coming days, which could really make things interesting because you have winter meetings that are trying to come up. Teams are making waiver moves right now. The Rule 5 is quickly approaching. A lockout just is really bad for baseball right now, and it kind of seems baseball's heading down the road that hockey was once down, and is trying to, I guess, fix itself because, from what I know, not a big hockey fan, but the Stanley Cup playoffs get people really, really excited, and baseball's got to find a way to get people excited again.
Well, I think people were really excited about the World Series this year.
With the Cubs, right.
Especially with the Cubs, but, I think they need to keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
It starts with getting a whole new CBA and then hopefully getting back to getting people excited, Oh, remember when the Cubs had that awesome year? Well, somebody's going to have another great year.
Right.
So.
And I think off of that, some people think baseball is dying, but I think the Cubs and the Indians really revived the sport, not just for baseball fans, but for sports fans in general. And it's something it's going to gradually grow again. It's just there hasn't been that one start. Like Mike Trout is the best player in baseball, but he plays on a terrible team that gets no attention.
Right, absolutely.
Unlike back in the day when Ken Griffey was all over the media.
And the Mariners were the best team in baseball.
Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, they're all over the media.
Right.
Now, Mike Trout's not all over the media.
No.
I mean, Big Papi was sort of that figure for the East Coast.
Right.
But he's not.
Well, now, I mean, Chris Bryant kind of for the Midwest.
And that's what it is more now. It's more regional players, and they need that one guy to become a national figure, and that could be Chris Bryant. It could be Francisco Lindor. It could be one of those guys, Bryce Harper. It all depends on how much baseball puts into it, really. And leagues like the NBA and NFL do a great job of marketing their superstars nationwide,
right.
Whereas the MLB focuses more on those regional players and showcasing the hometown favorites instead of the best players around the country, which each has its own benefits. You just have to find a way to do both well.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know, being a some sports fans don't necessarily like dynasties, and that's why a lot of people hated the Patriots throughout the 2000s, and when teams get on runs and it's the same team winning every year, can get a little boring, so to speak. But last year it was the Royals and the Mets in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of those teams had success in a number of years, and same for this year with it being the Cubs and the Indians. So is it almost beneficial to Major League Baseball that the teams that have been bottom feeders, maybe in the upcoming years, the Astros have been greatly improved, the Mariners have been getting better and heading back to success. Maybe that a team like that, or the Brewers or the Marlins get hot for 1 year and maybe create a little controversy. But is it that time where teams from the bottom have to win to get people back into the excitement of baseball?
Sure. I mean, everybody loves an underdog, and and I think this past World Series was everything about that. It was Cubs and Indians.
Right.
And I think even when the Devil Rays were in the World Series, everybody was rooting for them.
Yeah.
So who's going to be that next team? Could be the Nationals. I mean, they haven't won a World Series. Have they won a World Series when they were the Metros?
The Expos
or Expos?
I don't.
They haven't won one in Washington.
Okay.
And
in the franchise history, maybe before they were even the Expos. I'm not sure if the Expos were the expansion team.
Well,
the history.
Usually they don't carry the relocation wins or whatever with them, but I think a lot of it's like what you just said, the bottom feeders. Like when the Astros first made the playoffs last year for the first time in 10, 15 years, I didn't want them to lose.
Right. Everybody wanted to see.
Everybody on that team's a young guy with flair, and they play hard and they play reckless. And although it's not always the cleanest baseball, it's entertaining to watch. It's fun to watch when guys like Mike,
was 5'6", 100.
Altuve's making diving plays up the middle, and even Mike Trout plays baseball really well. But when he's robbing home runs, it's fun to watch, and it's things like that will bring people back to baseball. The Mets did that with every guy throwing 100 miles an hour from the staff, and the Marlins were close. They were real close this year to making that happen. It's going to be teams like that, the Marlins, the Mets, the Astros, even like Oakland.
Right.
Oakland, when they made their run at the beginning of the Billy Beane era and they won 20-something games in a row, something special happened and people pay attention.
Right.
I saw the movie, so.
Yeah. So, going on to our next topic, Brett, something that I guess is a little bit interesting for you. So this ACC Big Ten Challenge is coming up this week. Lots of good games here. We got UNC, Indiana, Ohio State, Virginia, Purdue, Louisville, Pitt, Maryland looks to be a good one. Virginia Tech, Michigan. I mean, Michigan State and Duke. There's just a lot of good matchups. But one that stuck out to me that I kind of had to chuckle as I was writing it down. So the Badgers are going to be playing Syracuse, which is where you are hoping to go to grad school.
Yep.
So the team you're hoping to go to grad school is coming to play the team where you're in state for your undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
Are you rooting for the Orange here, or do you just do you think it's just going to be a good game? Will the Orange outscore the football team this weekend, or what's going to happen there?
That's a good question, because first of all, how can two college football teams score 70-plus points against major opponents? They
only had 61.
Well, okay, but they gave up 70-something.
Yes,
so
yes, they did.
I mean, I'm rooting for Syracuse. A lot of people don't like Boeheim, but I think he's a great coach. He's one of the few people that gets away with running zone.
Yeah.
And they play it's not the highest scoring type of basketball, but they play an entertaining type of basketball. And Wisconsin is, I don't want to say they're similar, but they kind of are in the fact that it's hard-nosed defense that they try to use and turn into their offense, and that's something that both teams have done really well for the last decade plus. And obviously, if I'm going to go there, I want them to win.
No,
but
right.
There's just a lot of players that you don't like. They're not big-name players. They don't make big names for themselves on either team, but they're talented players, and it's a big resume builder right off the bat, really.
Yeah. Sticking with the same game, maybe more specifically with the team, Ben, obviously as a Badger fan,
yes.
We see a difference between what Bo Ryan was doing and what Greg Gard is doing.
Right.
Gard has had some questionable losses, some questionable close games that they should win, and we talked about them possibly even being overhyped coming into the season.
Yeah.
What do you think, Greg Gard? I guess he only had a half a season last year. He's not even halfway in this year. Is it too early to say he's the right choice, he's the wrong choice, or is he showing some things that maybe Badger fans have to get used to seeing, that it's different than what Bo Ryan was doing beforehand?
Yeah, I think your last point was really on point. I think Bo Ryan was there for so long, and when you're at a place for so long, you get stubborn in your ways.
Right.
You use the same thing, the same time, kind of like Belichick at the Patriots, or you can pretty much, or even Joe Paterno at Penn State.
Yep.
Pretty much you can look at any coach at any system that's been there for 15, 20 years, they're going to do this. They're going to do what works.
Right.
And maybe with the stuff Bo Ryan had, it doesn't work for Greg Gard.
Right.
Greg Gard is still, he's about one calendar year into coaching this team.
Right.
So you still got to give him time to figure out what he likes and, what he doesn't like.
Yeah.
And especially what his players like now that he is going out and recruiting his own guys.
Right, and having watched a couple of games, when you watch players like a Nigel Hayes or Zach Showalter, guys that were a part of that previous regime under Bo, that were recruited by Bo Ryan, versus some of the newer guys like a Khalil Iverson and Ethan Happ that kind of are growing a little more under Greg Gard. You can see a big difference, and it almost seems like you almost have two teams playing on one team trying to figure it out together.
Right, and really at the second half of the season, I felt Happ and Iverson, or that group at least, were kind of taking over the team.
Right.
And I think that's the road that really everybody wants to see them go, or at least I want to see them go, because you know how I love Nigel Hayes. So,
And I think one thing Greg Gard has already proven is that he can recruit, especially in state. He's already got Kobe King, who will be there next year. He's number 2 in the state, I believe, behind Hauser.
For next year? No, he's this year. Kobe King is
well,
this year.
Yeah, he'll be heading to Wisconsin next year.
Right. He's number 1 in the state class.
And then Tyler Harrow, he's
Hauser.
But Hero, he's one of the purest shooters I've seen play. I haven't seen Kobe King play, but getting those two top recruits, they're both nationally ranked. They're both two of the best players in the country, and he's already able to get both of them to lock themselves up early, as King committed I want to say halfway through last year in his junior year, and Hero already committed halfway through his sophomore season. So he's doing things right, and obviously the players like what they're hearing from him, and if they continue to play good basketball, which they're going to do.
Right.
They have the talent.
And going back to what you're talking about with Guard keeping two of the bigger prospects from the state here, in the past, it's almost been as if a lot of kids from the state of Wisconsin go to Marquette, not necessarily to UW, and UW is getting a lot of their top players from other states, not necessarily, just kind of losing that recruiting battle to Marquette. And like you mentioned, having two big-time commits already, both being Wisconsin natives, is huge for that program because it's kind of like just getting back to your roots a little bit, similar to what the football team did with hiring Paul Christ and getting back to, okay, we're going to buckle down, we're going to control our home, and we're going to do things the way that we usually do them to get back to our winning ways. Whereas with Anderson, they try to do all these new things and get out of state and start recruiting all these other athletes, and it just didn't work. No. Wisconsin is an old-time school. They do things a certain way. That's worked for them, and it kind of seems that both major sports there are kind of getting back to that a little bit. So and then finding success in doing it.
Yeah. Was Melvin Gordon an Anderson recruit, or was?
No, he was a Bielema.
Okay,
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he got hurt his freshman year. They redshirted him.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Did Gordon leave early? Did he leave? So he left as a junior. So he was 2 years under Bielema, 2 years under Anderson then. Okay. Yeah. Yep. He was a Bielema recruit.
Gary Anderson did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, because Bielema would have recruited Stave. He would have recruited Aberdaris. He would have recruited all those guys that Erickson, all the guys that ended up playing there. Thank you for nothing, Gary Anderson. Sticking on the topic of football, if you guys haven't noticed, on the site I've put up a couple of articles about some of the coaches that are kind of moving up the ranks a little bit. Coordinators to keep an eye on for possibly becoming head coaches. But this morning they listed the Royals Award finalists, which are like the coordinators of the year at the college ranks. And when I looked at this list, it was Jeremy Pruitt, defense coordinator from Alabama, Brent Venables, the defense coordinator from Clemson, Don Brown, the defense coordinator from Michigan, Jim Leavitt, the defense coordinator from Colorado, and Matt Canada, the offense coordinator from Pitt. And the one thing,
former offensive coordinator under Bielema.
And the one thing that kind of surprised me here was even in the offensive coordinator post that I had made, offense is kind of the name of the game, and a lot more offensive guys are getting head jobs because of the ability to score points. But yet 4 of the 5 finalists are defensive coordinators, which was a little bit shocking to me because you wouldn't necessarily think that defenses are still dominating the way that they used to.
And maybe that's why they're defensive coordinator, or they got this award, because, like you said, defenses haven't been able to stand out in D1, or at least not many of them have.
Right.
Teams like Clemson and Michigan, they have.
Right, and Alabama.
Alabama always does.
Right.
So, yeah. That's my
I got you.
Of all the offensive coordinators in Division I football, I would not think Pitts would be the one to get nominated.
Well, maybe the 71 or 74 points they scored this last weekend had a...
don't get me wrong. They have 2 big wins, I believe.
That I'm not sure. You'd have to check their schedule. I'm not 100% sure with that, but yeah, I do. But I can say that regardless, saying that Pitt, I know Pitt is bowl eligible. Not they're not
top 25 this week.
They are in the top 25.
They're 8-4.
8-4. That's not screaming national contender, but the one thing that I can tell you from going through each week is that Pitt does score quite a bit of points. I would not be surprised if they're near the top of the ACC in points scored.
They beat Penn State early in the season.
That's a huge win.
They lost to Virginia Tech by 3. They beat Clemson. That's right. So they have 2 wins versus the top 7.
Yeah.
Penn State wasn't top 7 when they played them.
That's what kind of kept Michigan down a little bit. Another big surprise that I saw today was that former Wisconsin defense coordinator Dave Aranda has signed an extension to stay in LSU with Ed Orgeron, which was probably another shocker to the world.
Yeah.
which I'll jump a little bit here. So Ed Orgeron stays in LSU with LSU because Tom Herman is not a very committed person. Which if he's married, I feel bad for his wife. But I mean, all these decisions are huge, and you said right away, yeah. I mean, Ed Orgeron staying in LSU, he hasn't been a head coach for probably a decade since he's been at Ole Miss. I guess what was the biggest shocker about this whole ordeal for you?
I think because they're LSU. They should usually a school of that level can pick anybody they want.
Right.
Anybody they want. It's not like people. It's not like they got to go to the people. People are going to come to them.
Yeah.
And to have a guy like Ed Orgeron who really didn't even coach that long at Ole Miss.
Right.
It's. I don't get it. Like, I get that the players like him, the students like him. He's an energetic guy. But hey, if they want to hand their organization to Ed Orgeron.
Well, and I guess the only defense that you can really make for Ed Orgeron would be if you look at what USC has done this year. I'm not sure where they're at in the new rankings or where they'll be tomorrow. They were 13 last week. They did the same thing. They fired Sarkisian and named Helton as the interim head coach.
And then
they named him as full-time, which now they're considered one of the top teams in the country. I guess LSU would hope that Orgeron can repeat that magic. But an interesting fact was that this year I think they've won 5 games under him, all SEC games, and that was more than his total combined in his years at Ole Miss.
I will give Ed Orgeron one thing.
Okay.
So from 1988 to 1992, he was the defensive line coach for Miami. You know who he recruited?
Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne the Rock Johnson. He was the guy who started everything.
Okay.
So,
do you want to talk about the animated feature that The Rock is in?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, so we won't talk about it.
Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay.
But I've seen that it's doing very well.
It looks good.
But yeah, besides that, obviously Ed Orgeron was the fallback of Tom Herman going from Houston to Texas. Do you guys think this is a smart move? Is this an over-exaggerated move by Texas to fire Charlie Strong so fast? Is Tom Herman even the right guy? This whole process was just an absolute mess. If you're the AD, do you handle it the same way? Do you handle it differently? Brett, what do you...
Charlie Strong has been on the hot seat for basically since
he got
the last game of the first season he was there.
Right.
So the last 2 seasons he's been. A lot of people thought he would get fired last year.
Right.
Not make it to this year, and he makes it to this year, and they get the big win versus Notre Dame, which turns out to be not so big of a win.
Right.
And then they go. I don't know what they ended up at, but 4-8. Or
Notre
5
Dame.
and no
Texas 5-7.
5-7.
If they would have won yesterday or Friday, they would have been bowl eligible. But it seems like they still will be.
Yep.
And the AD has said that they're not going to leave it up to the players, but they're going to leave it up to the new coach who's been there to have a cup of coffee if they're going to compete in this bowl game or not, which I think is unfair to the team and the kids.
Well, it's like when the Badgers hired Gary Anderson before their bowl game. They decided that that Barry Alvarez was going to coach.
Right.
And I think, even though they lost that game, I think that was the right coach, or that was the right choice.
Decision. Yeah.
Yes. With this, I think I like the hire. Essentially, I think it's smart having a guy from Texas who's been recruiting in Texas for a couple of years now, having him get hired to the Longhorns, but you can't have him come in after coaching his team for, really what was a miracle season for Houston for a while.
Yeah.
Come in and coach a whole new group of kids for one game. That would be awkward.
Right. Well, and not only that, but I think you also, by the way this whole situation went down, not only did you do an injustice to the kids that are at Texas, but I think by the way they handled it and they announced it, they did an injustice to the kids at Houston
for sure,
who were trying to prepare for a game against Memphis, who's a very good, tough opponent, and you're talking about their head coach already walking out the door. and they haven't even finished the season yet.
Well, they knew that was coming.
I mean, you know it's coming, but it's a lot different than, if the final game was over and, Friday the season ends, Tom Herman says, hey, I talked to my kids already, my players, I'm leaving for Texas. And this was, if he would have did it on Saturday, no problem.
Yeah.
But to announce it on Thursday that he's taking the LSU job, then he doesn't take the LSU job, and on Saturday, then this whole debacle goes down with Charlie Strong and Tom. I just think that handled better, absolutely. A couple other hires. Good old Butch Davis, former head coach of the Cleveland Browns
and Miami
and North Carolina, has been hired at Florida International. So we'll see how that situation is going to go. And the former coach of Aaron Rodgers at Cal, Jeff Tedford, has been hired at Fresno State. So all these in-season hirings are starting to take place. A lot of names switching places, and that leads us to what is possibly the biggest weekend of college football of this year, and pretty much every year.
Wait! I thought a couple of weeks ago they said that was the biggest week of college football of all time.
No.
What?
No.
This is Richie's biggest weekend of college football.
It's Champions Weekend, so every conference championship is going to be settled this weekend, which to me, that's the most important game.
Sure.
You want to win your conference, and, for some teams, this, like an Alabama, a Wisconsin, or a Penn State, or even a Clemson, losing this game could possibly put you out of a race for the playoffs.
Alabama's in. They're locked.
No, I agree, but there's some other teams that could be sitting on the bubble. And you have a Western Michigan plays Ohio for the MAC. One of the things that I had talked about, if Western Michigan wins this game to go undefeated for the regular season, is there a chance that we see them in a major bowl? We talked about it a little bit last week, but do they get into, a Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Orange Bowl, kind of like Northern Illinois did a couple years ago?
What is a major bowl now? Not that
would it be the New Year's Six? Is
part of the New Year's Six? Yeah,
the New Year's Six, and I guess what would be considered the playoff games would probably be your major.
Sure, why not?
Let's see what they can do against the big boys. Brett is adamantly shaking.
I think they should be, but if you look at how the playoff committee has ranked them so far this year, they haven't been higher than 21.
I did see which poll?
The AP, they've been like 14 for like a month.
They were 13. I saw that today.
But the college football playoff rankings poll by the committee, they have not been higher than either 20 or 21. And you can't tell me that, I understand the SEC is good and Auburn and all these other teams are good, but
they're undefeated regardless.
Yeah, they're undefeated. They've beaten everybody they've put on their schedule.
Right.
They play their conference. If they could be in another conference, I'm sure they'd. Glad they'll be in the SEC, but they're not allowed in the SEC.
Right. Yeah.
And there's teams like Nebraska. Nebraska's obviously fallen off a little bit, and they've dropped lower in the rankings. But you have 3 lost teams ahead of an undefeated team.
And USC's a 3-loss team.
Yeah, and USC's up to 10 in the AP poll today.
So, I guess. I completely lost my train of thought. I had a question for you, and then I just blanked.
Let's move on to the next.
Yeah. So Pac-12 would be Colorado, Washington, which is might break your record of Pitt and Syracuse for points scored, because both teams are good defensively, but these offenses are absolutely insane. A funny story about Jake Browning today. I was having a conversation at Concordia with one of our coaches, and he had asked about Jake Browning, and we went and looked at his high school stats. I believe he played 8-man football in the part of California that he was from. His senior year, he threw 91 touchdown passes to 7 interceptions.
Wow.
Which is absolutely insane. But I guess I'm going to say, the over-under total points scored in this game, you would think would have to be 100. Am I right? This game is going to be wild, and I think it's going to be very entertaining.
I watched the second half of the Colorado-Utah game, and I will give Colorado credit. They go deep on almost every single play.
Yeah.
They threw more deep balls if it was almost not quite like the Bears where they dropped every single pass that was thrown, but
And you had to bring that up.
well, because it's so similar. They dropped a lot of deep balls that they had chances for 40, 50-yard plays, and they just didn't convert.
So
but
you're saying, the Colorado game, I think, ended up being a 7-point game. You're saying
27-22 or something
like
to that effect.
So you're saying that it should have been a blowout, essentially.
Oh, they could have easily put
Colorado.
up 40, 45, but the wide receivers kind of let them down. The quarterback wasn't quite as sharp, and some of that has to do with Utah being a pretty good defense. But this week could easily be – it could be the highest scoring game of the week, but I don't know. Navy Temple could end up being a –
Yeah, Navy putting up 75 points last week was a bit of a
as a triple option team. Well, and then you always got to look at the Big 12 because Oklahoma
Nobody
State
plays
and
defense.
Oklahoma don't play defense.
Right. With that, I guess it was almost a sheer lock that Lamar Jackson was going to win the Heisman Trophy. But now they're talking about there's a chance that he could lose it because Louisville has struggled a bit here as of late. They've lost their last 2 games in a row. Is there any chance that Jake Browning could jump Lamar Jackson, you think? Does he need to be just absolute dominant? Or if they win this game and make the playoff, the wins are going to carry more effect than what he's done on the field?
I mean, Washington struggled too.
Yeah, they had the one loss
Right. And,
versus USC.
You kind of have to do the thing, during the Heisman ceremony when they're breaking it down, they got that big board with like all the regions and how the regions voted and stuff. You kind of have to look at it that way and see, how are the teams in the other Pac-12 going to vote? Are they going to vote for Browning?
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
Right.
What about the ACC? What about the Big Ten? I think Jabril Peppers could get some votes too.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
So I think it's going to be interesting. It's definitely not automatically Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
But some players could be knocking on the door.
Okay. Brett?
He played so well early in the season.
Browning or Jackson?
Jackson.
Okay.
But as of late, I mean, he turned the ball over 4 times on Saturday.
Yep.
And Kentucky's better than they used to be, but they're not.
But it's still Kentucky, right?
They're not that good of a football team for him to commit 4 turnovers, and I think he had like 200 total yards. He didn't do much
like that, right?
But
not much for his standard.
Yeah, I mean, well, even 200 total yards for a quarterback, regardless of who you are, isn't much. Okay. But he'll probably end up winning the Heisman because Deshaun Watson hasn't had the year many people expected. Leonard Fournette's been hurt for 3 months.
Yeah.
Browning,
it's almost like you're saying he's going to win by default, almost.
Partially because other people didn't put together full seasons.
Okay.
And he put together probably the most complete season in college football. I mean, Jabril Peppers had the most complete season, but he's a defensive player, and that's going to hurt him.
Right. No, I'm 100% with you. A finalist for the Heisman.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I thought you were
Well, no. You said you're 100% with him, and you liked my points.
Hey, I can.
You can't be 100%.
I'm sorry.
Both.
I can't be both.
You can't be on both sides of the track. It doesn't work.
What I'm 100% for is this Big 12 championship game when I'm decked up my Oklahoma gear. Cheering on the Sooners.
Question. Why is this game this week? It's not a championship game. It should be last week.
Because
it's not championship weekend if Oklahoma State.
You want to know why? Because they have the people in charge of the Big 12, and they were looking for common sense and they couldn't find it. I mean, that's just the reality. Common sense apparently isn't so common when you're running the Big 12. I mean, the way that they're running it, I think the 3 of us could do a better job at this point. I'm just saying. I think if we put in our applications, we might get some serious consideration.
I get a question though. Compare both the Big 12 and Big 10.
Yep.
Both have teams that are right on the edge.
Yeah, Oklahoma being the one for the Big 12.
I've even heard Oklahoma State could get
in. Yep. And you have Penn State, Wisconsin. Michigan. Possibly.
Well, no, of the teams playing this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Do any of those 4 get in?
Ooh. I think we talked about last week the best chance of any of the teams getting in would be Wisconsin winning out. Is something that
Yes.
we definitely talked about. I don't know if Penn State wins, whether they get in or not, whether Penn State can jump that high to jump Michigan is completely different. If Wisconsin wins out, having played Michigan tough, Ohio State tough, but having the key wins that they do, and then adding another team like Penn State to their resume is absolutely huge for the Badgers, I think, which can put them in, and I think would be enough for them to jump Michigan. But other than that, I don't think any other of the three truly have a chance. Do you think Penn State can get in?
Three what? I'm sorry.
Oklahoma State, or Penn State getting in if they win.
If Penn State wins, I think they have a shot.
Okay. Because I think you have to consider. Do we consider Ohio State a lock in having this conversation?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. That's why I think if Penn State wins, if they want to put Ohio State in, they're going to have to put Penn State in too.
Okay.
I think if Penn State wins, they have to get in. I don't
to.
see how there's.
So
You can't
no matter
put
what,
Michigan or Ohio State in when Penn State beat Ohio State. Penn State's 2 losses are better than Michigan's 2 losses.
Okay.
Because Michigan lost to Iowa and
Ohio State.
Penn State lost to Pittsburgh, which is now top 25,
Yep.
and Michigan.
Right.
So yes, Michigan beat. The problem is if
throttled
they
Penn State.
yes, but if you put Ohio State in over Penn State, you're saying head-to-head doesn't matter.
Right.
If you put Penn State in over Michigan, you're saying head-to-head doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's why they're saying the committee has really their first problem in the 3 years
Right.
is Ohio
It's not
State
clear-cut.
is going to ruin everything.
But the other thing you also have to look at is, we're talking about this in terms of can those teams get in? It's not only going to come down to just those games. You also have to look at is if Clemson beats Virginia Tech, does Clemson stay in? Washington, do they stay in, or do they? You know what I mean? Depending upon winning or losing there. So not only do Penn State, Wisconsin, Oklahoma State have to handle business, but they got to figure out, based on what other teams do, winning or losing, can they jump high enough, or what is considered deserving of making this Final Four. And an article was posted today on ESPN talking about if the playoff expanded from 4 to a bigger, like an 8 or a 10. That game this last weekend of Michigan, Ohio State, how exciting and just heart-wrenching that game was. It doesn't matter because they're both getting in, and that's creating this excitement, which this is really the first time in the 3-year existence that I think having a 4 playoff or a 4-team playoff is a good number.
Sure.
Because in the years past, it's been so easy that it's almost like, why not put more teams in?
Right. Yeah, you made a great point.
CBS Sports has Alabama and Ohio State as their 2 locks.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of people have Ohio State.
Yes.
I just don't see how Ohio State is a lock. I know they're 11-1.
Well, and I think if you look at the hottest teams in college football right now, I think it goes Alabama, Ohio State, USC.
I don't think you can put Ohio State second. They beat Michigan State by a point because Michigan State couldn't figure out how to get the ball anywhere near the 30-yard line.
But
they beat them 17-16 a week ago, and then they beat Michigan on who knows if they even really beat Michigan.
yeah, right.
And
But
that's
at
why
the end of the day, regardless of how you look at it, you got to look at the wins and losses. It sucks to say that because I completely agree. But no matter what, you have to look at who they beat, who they lost to, and do they fit the eye test? And I think that Ohio State is probably, on paper, the second most talented team behind Alabama in the country in terms of just looking at their roster and looking at what they do when they play other teams. They were able to beat Wisconsin, who's a top 7 team, whether it be in overtime or not. They beat Michigan, who's a top 4 team. They have those wins on their resume that put them into that conversation. No, they're not Alabama. Alabama, it's kind of Alabama gap everybody else. But I think Ohio State leads that everybody else, despite the fact that they won't be able to play this weekend.
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with you. The question I'm trying to say, what what's wrong with having 2 Big Ten teams in the
Right.
playoff?
And that was something that we talked about last week, too.
It seems like everybody doesn't want to say that, but, I mean, they would have 2 SEC teams in there in a heartbeat if there was another word.
Right, no, absolutely. And I think people's biggest concern is, I think that was people's biggest concern with the 4 teams was they're like, oh, this is just a way for college football to get multiple SEC teams into the playoffs. And that was the fear for the first 2 years because they had those teams up there. But eventually some year, there's going to be 2 teams from the same conference that are going to get in. And if those 2 teams are deserving, I honestly don't see an issue with it.
And I'm sure the Big 12 is going to do a lot of whining again.
Again,
that none of their teams are in the they're just not good enough.
Right. And the fact that they decide that they don't need to expand, they don't need to have a big time conference championship game like the other conferences do, when year after year the committee says we take conference championships into consideration. We take the strength of your conference into consideration, and yet the Big 12, year after year, says, well, it's not our fault, it's the committee's fault. And it's just, it's one of those awful things. But
how are you going to, if, say Washington wins, how do you keep them out?
Right, no, that's what
because you're not keeping Clemson out.
Right, you're not going to keep Clemson out if they win. You know what? The idea that I had last week of us bringing in Dakota and the 4 of us being the playoff committee, I think that would make for great entertainment.
Sure,
and we would have to Facebook Live that for sure.
So going off, like people have said, the Pac-12 is weak this year. Yeah. It's not weak. They have 5 teams in the top 25.
Right. Well, I'm 100% with you, but I think in terms of saying down, it's because the teams at the top aren't, every
they're
year. They're
just different names. Just because Oregon's not at the top doesn't mean.
But usually, the Pac-12 looks like, I think what's surprising people is the Big Ten. I don't think anybody anticipated the Big Ten to have 4 teams in the top 7, which is making them believe that other conferences are hurting, because the Big Ten has never been considered the elite conference because of the way that they've played in the postseason and the way that they've struggled in their bowl games when it's a team outside of their conference. But realistically speaking, from top to bottom, the Big Ten might be the deepest conference in college football, but people only care about the cream that rises to the top.
And I can see that. I just don't. The Big Ten people will not care if the Big Ten gets 2 teams in, if it's Ohio State and Michigan or Ohio State and Wisconsin.
Right.
But if it's Penn State,
people are going to go nuts.
And that's the thing that doesn't make sense.
And not only that, but I think one of the problems you're going to have is if Penn State makes this playoff, it's not going to be about Penn State. It's going to be about where they came from with the whole Sandusky and Joe Paterno situation kind of halting them a little bit and them kind of rebounding and not necessarily being punished as much as people thought they should have been.
They should still be suspended right now.
Right, exactly.
Right now that's irrelevant.
Which your favorite program, ESPN, you're going to see a whole lot of Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky if they make the playoffs. Because I know how much you love your repeated stories on ESPN.
Oh boy, Mike and Mike. Oh, God. I heard they might be canceling it.
Mike and Mike is getting canceled.
I heard. That's what I heard.
So would you be upset if I threw an offer out to Greeny to come in and do a
No, I mean, I'm sure he's a very intelligent.
All right. Staying on topic of football, moving on to the NFL. One of the things that I noticed, another, I guess I should say, for me, mainly being a Bears fan, another player went down. Danny Trevathan is out. But not only in Chicago, but all over the league, injuries are just seem to be up and high numbers, and just anything that, Derek Carr breaks his pinky finger snap, taking a snap from under center, just like, is this a CBA thing where you think because guys aren't allowed to necessarily practice as much, or is this just a new age of players being not as tough, maybe not to, putting it politely?
Right.
What is the cause behind all these just all of a sudden, the last couple of years.
I wouldn't tell J.J. Watt that. Oh, he's not tough enough.
Yeah, no,
right.
No, I mean, season-ending injuries happen, but it just seems there's more nicks and bumps that guys are sitting out for a couple of weeks or whatever than there used to be, I should say.
Right. I think it is CBA.
Okay.
I think they're not, with the loss of two-a-days and not enough contact practices, they're not getting their bodies almost used to that contact.
Right.
You look at so many players that hold out.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like whenever they hold out, after that they get hurt.
Right.
Because they're not practicing.
Right.
So I don't want to talk about practice the entire time, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
To me, it is.
Right.
I think it has to do with players are looking out more for their own future now than worrying about football. Like, I read something, I read an article about J.J. Watt last week saying he considered retirement before this season because of the injuries that he sustained. He obviously didn't retire, but this latest injury could be something that makes him reconsider. And then there was another college football player today that said he's not coming back next year because he wants his mind to be okay when he's older. And I think the injuries and the effects it has long term is starting to scare players a lot more than it used to. And also the medical staffs are just so much more careful.
Oh, shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and not only that, but I mean, and especially something that I guess we go through, especially, as a recruiter looking at certain kids and talking to kids every day. You do get the kids that fit the mold, but they're, and obviously to make the NFL, you have to be talented and have that dedication, but there's so much more to life that people just, these players that are good aren't 24/7 football the way that I guess the older generations used to be, where it was almost like football is our livelihood, it's what defines us, and we're just going to go out there and be monsters, so to speak, whereas now it's like, J.J. Watt, obviously people know who J.J. Watt is as a defensive end, and defensive player of the year, but he's doing all these commercials and endorsements and, that it's almost, people will be like, oh yeah, he's that guy from the Bose commercial, or
Papa John's.
He's Papa John's, or NBA fans will be like, oh, he's the guy that does the commercial with Kevin Durant, and not necessarily know who J.J. Watt is, where it's almost like players are being known more for their face and not necessarily for their play.
Yeah.
Which is another thing you were talking about with baseball. Mm-hmm. Players are more known so for their play and not their face. And the NFL is obviously a little bit backwards, which I can see. I mean, that, practice does have a lot to do with it.
And, I don't want to, don't get me wrong, Gronk is a great player.
Right.
But he is hurt all the time.
Yeah.
He came out, he played basically 2 plays this week.
Yeah.
Dropped both balls. I mean, one of them was an overthrow, but the next one he dropped. And then it just doesn't... Martellus Bennett's out there with, I don't know, he gets hit every single play, and he's out there and he's played every game, and he's...
Yeah.
But Gronk, I don't know if he's worried about his future or what, but he gets hurt, and he goes to the locker room, and he's ruled out of every game. He never comes back, and... I don't know if the Patriots are just trying to get him to the playoffs somewhat healthy.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get there.
How much of that has to do with his past? I mean, having, broken his forearm and having those I guess, severe or more severe injuries, costing him longer periods of time. I guess you would almost say, hey, just sit out this week. Let's just get you to the postseason, knowing that they're going to make it.
But, so, the situation last week, he took the hit from... Chancellor.
Yeah.
And they said it was I don't even remember what they said. It was something like internal bleeding or something to that effect. But he played the rest of that game. That was in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And yet there was questions. He supposedly was ruled out on Thursday, and he still played Sunday. Played 2 plays, he dove, rolled over, and then he's out of the game because his back hurts. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of... And AJ Green, as soon as he got hurt, they said, oh, he's probably out for the year.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I know your season's over,
right.
but
Well,
the guy.
and I think at this stage of the season, though, too, you also do have to look at it at that point where, for a player such as AJ Green, where a hamstring is something that can cost you a couple weeks, depending upon the severity of it, or if you completely tore it, to where it's the point where with AJ Green, if he's going to be back, week 16 or even week 17, why not just let him catch the offseason early, rehab it back, and be more so worried about his future, knowing that you're not going anywhere this year, and just chalk it up as a lost season. You're going to fire your head coach regardless, it almost seems. Why you want to keep that future versus try to strain it out? I don't think anybody anticipated Calvin Johnson up and retiring, before this, after last season. You don't want an AJ Green to do that, because then you're really in a
Detroit's
tough spot.
just a weird place. Apparently people don't want to spend more than 10 years there.
Well, and they're leading the division without him, which is heartbreaking. But
it's great. It's great.
Talking about injuries with New England, obviously New England is not trembling in their boots, but Miami has rattled off 6 in a row.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where did this come from? Is this just the players are buying into Adam Gase's system as a coach? Because it's almost exactly the same exact team as last year for the most part. Granted, the Jay Ajayi playing and Lamar Miller is in Houston. That's the only real difference here.
And they also have Laramie Tunsil now on the line.
Right, but I believe he was hurt this last week and didn't play.
He has been playing. He's been very good.
Yeah. So, is it, or is this a sign for things to come, that Miami's going to be a good team?
You got to look at who they've beaten for these 6 wins in a row. They beat Pittsburgh without Big Ben.
Right.
Buffalo, they've won games, but Tyrod Taylor's not.
Still not the answer, Ben.
Tyrod Taylor.
Still not.
The Jets might be. The Jets are just bad. They did beat the Chargers. The Chargers are a decent team.
Right.
But the Rams can't score, and the 49ers are the second worst team in football.
Are they worse? They're worse than Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Colin Kaepernick is worse than Jay Cutler.
Oh. Ooh.
I agree with him.
Bro, I'm just saying, Brett's throwing some shots around in here.
Because my second favorite team growing up has always been the 49ers, and when Harbaugh chose to go with Kaepernick over Alex Smith,
you knew.
I thought it was the wrong decision. Smith was 9-1 that year when he got hurt.
Right.
He was out for 2 weeks, and then Kaepernick they made it to the Super Bowl, but Smith didn't do anything to lose his job.
Yeah. Well, and bringing that up, it made me remember something that I was going to ask you guys. So we talked, bringing up that Super Bowl specifically. John Harbaugh this weekend. Did you guys see how that Baltimore Ravens game ended?
I don't believe so.
So there's now talk of how
the holding.
Last year with
holding.
Detroit, Green Bay, they got the face mask as time expired, which gave the offense an untimed down to run another play. If it's an offensive penalty, the clock runs out and it's a 10-second runoff.
Yes.
If it's under a minute.
Yep.
And so the Baltimore Ravens are up 7, and they're backed up in their own end zone with, I think, 14 seconds. It was under 20
13
seconds
or 14
left.
seconds.
And John Harbaugh tells his special teams to go out there, and the punter is going to run around in the end zone.
Yeah.
And all they're going to do is they're going to hug the guy across from them and just hold them. And if they try to run away, tackle them. Because it runs out the clock, and a penalty on the offense cannot give an untimed down to the defense or special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be fixed, or is this going to be an issue where teams are going to see it and they're going to take advantage, and this is going to be the new way that games end in the NFL when they're close?
Pretty sure they said they did it in the Super Bowl, too.
They did, and that's what made me remember that was they did it against the 49ers.
Well, it was a little bit different. They didn't hold them. It was just the punter just kind of.
Yeah, he said I forget who it was. He said they didn't execute it very well in the Super Bowl. This one was a lot more well executed, and I think it's kind of cheap.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, something's got to be done, especially when it's that intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I would almost say, maybe an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
Because if you watch it, it's really bad.
Well, and so I read that if say the clock didn't run out and they had to run another play, say the Ravens had to run another play for whatever reason, that the ref can call that intentional. They can call it something that results in a penalty that results in an untimed down, so the opposing team would have gotten the ball. The ref can
really
make the decision that is
it's a
not right for the game and
right. Well, I think they should have done it for that game. But, Baltimore ended up winning, but that's just an awful. It's awful for the sport of football.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break.
Yep.
We're at about an hour. When we come back, we will wrap it up.
Yep.
All right. All right. We're back. You guys, it was nothing, so I don't even know why I'm saying we're back. But let's do this.
Yeah, so again, for the third week in a row, I have found a hot topic that we're going to do Contender Pretender. This has kind of become our thing. I don't tell these guys what it is until I get here, I promise. So this week, I decided to go look at the NFL standings, and I wrote down the 6th seed for the playoffs, which is kind of that team that's obviously going to fluctuate a little bit, on down, and, kind of clear up this playoff picture a little bit.
So, Contender Pretender for playoffs.
For playoffs, for the teams that are contending for a wild card spot.
Okay.
So the first team in the 6th seed.
Question first.
Yes.
So, in the AFC, obviously, the Chiefs and Broncos, well, they were the 6th seed. Dolphins are now, I believe.
Yeah.
But, so are we not looking at their division? Because obviously some of the teams in the NFC could flip-flop in their division.
That is up to you.
That is totally up to you. I did look at that as well and wrote some teams down solely based for the fact that they could not necessarily win the wild card, but they could overtake their division.
Okay.
So the first team, Brett already mentioned, the hot Miami Dolphins. Are they a contender for that 6th spot, or did they get pretender? Ben?
Oh, they're a contender.
Okay.
They've been playing great. I am convinced.
You are convinced. Brett?
I'll say they're a contender because of Denver's schedule.
Ooh.
Denver still has to play Oakland and Kansas City again, and New England. And, 3 more losses. The Dolphins will probably lose to New England as well.
Right.
But other than that, I still don't see how
I'm with you guys for a different reason, because I still think the key to winning football games is running the ball and playing defense.
Okay.
And Miami does a good job running the ball, and they do enough on defense to give their offense a chance to score enough points to win on Sundays.
All right, Coach.
The second team, as you just mentioned, we'll find out what Brett has to say here. The Denver Broncos. You just mentioned their schedule. Are they still going to be able to compete, or are they done?
I think they're done.
They're done. So both teams that played in last year's Super Bowl will not make the playoffs, according to Brett Berg.
We didn't talk about Carolina yet.
Well, we know that they're not going to make the playoffs.
I don't know about that. The NFC South's very, very, I don't know.
Outside of Atlanta.
Even Atlanta is sometimes iffy.
Yeah. Okay.
Broncos pretenders.
Pretenders. Okay. I think they could shock. I think they could win some of those close games. I will say contender for the time being. Okay. Next week I might change my mind, but
all right.
Is Trevor Siemian better than Brock Osweiler?
Oh, I asked Ben that question. Ben loved Brock Osweiler going into the season.
Brock Osweiler's better.
Okay.
That means Trevor Siemian's not very good.
Yeah, because they're talking about benching Osweiler this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Who thought that we would be talking about this team for a wild card? Baltimore has seemed to take over that division. Yeah. They're on top. Pittsburgh still has a chance, obviously, to win the division, but is Pittsburgh falling off, or are they just going through a rough patch right now?
I'm going to say contender with an asterisk.
Ooh.
Because I think they need to win the division.
Okay.
In the playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they have to. I think they will win the division. They're tied with Baltimore right now, but
Baltimore owns a tiebreaker because was that the week Roethlisberger was out? They played?
No, because they
his
played.
first game back?
Miami played
Okay.
Big Ben without.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know. We'll see. The Dolphins play the Ravens this week, so one of them's going to lose.
There you go. That'll clear it up. I'm with you. The asterisk is a good addition. I will keep the asterisk there and not remove it. Another team that's in the same position that's going to need to probably win their division or make the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans.
Super pretender.
Super pretender. They can't beat the Houston Texans.
Oh, wait.
Because they would have to win
their
division to get
division
in.
sucks. No, they're a contender.
Okay.
They're
That was a complete change of heart real fast there.
I want to say they're a contender, but
Only for the division, obviously.
yeah. I mean, they got Denver next. Then they got the Chiefs, then the Jaguars.
So now, if I got this correctly, Houston is a half game up on Tennessee. They're 6-5, and Tennessee's 6-6. So is this going to be another year of 8-8 or 7-9, getting into the playoffs and hosting a playoff game?
Houston could get above that. They got the Packers, Colts, Jaguars, and Bengals. I don't.
so they
If
have
the
an easier
Titans,
schedule.
if the Titans end up winning, I don't see them getting much above. I think 8-8 is where it ends up being.
Where it ends up being. Okay. Moving over to the NFC, a team that a couple weeks ago I don't think we would be asking if they were a contender or pretender. But the Washington Redskins have kind of fallen apart the last couple of weeks. They obviously had a big victory against Green Bay, but they're back to 6-5. Obviously, nobody's going to catch Dallas in that division, and the Giants are playing real well. So they have to fight for a wild card, it seems.
I'm going to say contender because at this point there are not many wild card options in the NFC.
Okay.
I mean who? I mean the Cardinals are falling apart.
Right. Green Bay,
Minnesota. I think at least one's going to come from the East.
Right.
Right now it looks like the Giants.
The Giants are going to be that team. Yeah.
So for the Redskins, I'm going to say contender.
Okay.
I'll say contender as well. Pretty much same thing. I mean, they have the offense to compete with anybody. It's just making sure it shows up.
Right.
And
who would have thought the NFC East would be the best division?
It was the NFC least last year. Now it's the NFC.
That's right. And I'm going to go opposite of you guys because my next two teams for me are the contenders. I think Washington is a pretender, and they're kind of coming back down to reality here. And the team that's overachieving, so to speak, is the New York Giants. But I think another team can get hot and get in over the Washington Redskins, which leads me to my next team, who, like I said, I think they can be a contender if they keep playing the way they played yesterday, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Are they able to get in over? They have the same record as the Washington Redskins right now. But that last spot at 6-5, you have like four teams that are.
I'm going to say super pretender. For this one.
All right, Brett.
They do have an easy schedule the rest of the way. Pass defense wise, because as I was talking to you a little bit about having Winston as my fantasy QB. Yeah. Obviously, I didn't play him yesterday. I only scored 14 points, but they said the last 5 weeks he's got some pretty good matchups. So I'll go contender just because of
that's what I like
who they can play. You never know with Atlanta. You never know.
The next one, as I said, again, I have as a contender, and I think can pass the Redskins. That's the Minnesota Vikings. I think even though they started out hot and they've been up and down, I still think they have the pieces to succeed. As long as they can keep people from scoring, I think they can score enough to win some football games.
Well, Sam Bradford's run out of the juice that he wished for from his fairy godmother.
I thought it was the MJ water.
The MJ water. You thought it was I don't know. It was It was the Cinderella wish.
Okay.
It's midnight now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say pretender.
All right.
Yeah, they can't run. They can't pass. What are they? They can't score.
Adrian Peterson's coming back soon.
Yeah. He's gonna rush for 1,000 yards over the last 3 games.
3 games. He's gonna run over.
Yep, and he's gonna win MVP for a 3-game season.
Yep.
The last one that I have plays tonight, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles.
No Green Bay Packers?
What?
I do not have the Green Bay Packers.
You don't even think they have a chance at the division?
Right now, I do not.
Okay.
Next week, if we did this, maybe. Depending on tonight, but
I'm going to say contender for Philly.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Detroit's 7-4 or whatever, but
Yeah.
the Packers could still very easily win the division.
Is Green Bay 5-6?
They're 4-6.
4-6. So
They have
they're
a shot.
2 games.
And it's Detroit. It's the Detroit Lions.
hey.
The Lions have not won or lost a game by more than 7. Eventually, they're going to lose some of
And
these.
you want to know something? And they only play one quarter too. It's the fourth. That's the only
That's
quarter
the most
of
important one, apparently.
That is the most important one. So if you can win the fourth quarter, you can win football games. So that's our contender for tonight.
All right, we're going to go through this real quick.
Okay.
A lot of NFL records being talked about right now. I'm
Yeah.
going to talk to some about you guys.
Okay.
There's some interesting facts here. So Marcus Mariota, you're a big fan of Marcus Mariota.
Yep.
He's now thrown for multiple touchdown passes in 8 consecutive games.
Okay.
That is the single longest season record in NFL history for a quarterback in their first 2 seasons.
Really?
So he's doing pretty good, yeah. Phillip Rivers, you like Phillip Rivers, big fan of Phillip Rivers. He has recorded his 11th consecutive season with 3,000 passing yards, tied for 4th longest in NFL history. The other 3
How many seasons?
are 11.
So it's almost like he has a kid for every year that he throws
Yeah.
for 3,000 yards.
So yeah, pretty much.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's tied with Eli Manning, who
Okay.
is 30 yards away from breaking that record. So
Okay.
he's going to be breaking that record
Yeah.
pretty soon.
Right.
Peyton Manning and Drew Brees tied for second with 13 seasons. Guess who's number 1?
Ooh.
Come on,
What do you got?
come on. Who's number 1?
Brady? No.
Tom Brady tore his ACL,
Yeah.
so it can't be seasons.
Brett.
Marino?
Favre.
Favre?
Brett Favre.
Yeah.
18 seasons.
Oh, that's
The only seasons he did not throw for 3,000 yards was his first and last.
wow. That's impressive.
All right. A lot of records for Justin Tucker. So Justin Tucker, he's the first player in NFL history to kick 3 field goals of at least 50 yards in the first half of the game. He has now converted 34 consecutive field goal attempts. That is the 6th longest in NFL history.
Good for him.
Who's the longest?
Vinatieri.
Didn't he set it this year?
No.
I thought when he made his, 44 in a
No,
row?
I think that was PATs.
No, because Gostowski made like 270.
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Number 1, Mike Vanderjagt.
Really? Oh, I guess with the Colts
42.
playing inside.
42 in a row.
I can see that.
Matt Ryan. You
Okay.
think Matt Ryan's going to be a Hall of Famer?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right, here's one.
Come on.
Here's
Can't cheer
one-
for the
okay.
Boston guy?
No, I like him, but he's not going to be a Hall of
Here's a
Famer.
stat for people that might not think so. Matt Ryan he's the first player in NFL history to pass for at least 200 yards in 50 consecutive games.
That's impressive. That's pretty
So
good.
there you go.
That's pretty
Put
good.
that in your yeah. Eli Manning climbing up the charts. He's now passed Ryan Tarkenton to become the 8th all-time in passing yards.
Okay. Who? Somebody did passing yards or touchdowns this weekend too. Not Eli, but
I
somebody.
got a couple things. Things on here.
All right.
Phillip Rivers. He is 37 yards away from passing Drew Bledsoe for 12th all-time.
Okay, that wasn't the one that I saw.
Carson
But that's-
Palmer. This might be the one. Carson Palmer passed Joe Montana for 15th all-time.
In passing yards.
touchdowns.
Touchdowns. Okay.
So
Nah, that's not
he's better than Joe
Montana.
Montana now.
Anyway.
And he's 74 yards away from passing Dan Fouts for 14th
So
all-time
he
passing
could pass
yards
Dan Fouts this year, yeah. Okay.
this week.
All right.
Um,
Yeah. This week.
Ben Roethlisberger, he's at 298 passing touchdowns, 2 away from 300,
Yep.
which was also John Elway's career passing touchdowns and that would be 9th all-time.
Okay.
Frank Gore, big fans of Frank Gore here. Frank Gore, 29 rushing yards away from passing Tony Dorsett for 8th all-time.
Frank
Wow.
Gore. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Never would have thought of Frank
Yeah.
Gore.
Ageless wonder.
Yeah.
Jason Witten, 3 catches away from tying his former teammate, T.O., for 7th all-time
Receptions.
in receptions.
Larry Fitzgerald, I think, was the
We
one I
have
saw.
to talk about Larry
Yeah.
Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Larry Fitzgerald just passed Tim Brown for 5th all-time in career receptions.
I think that might have been the
And
one I
then he's
saw.
5 catches away from tying Chris Carter for 4th all-time.
He could get that this week, too.
And he's 6 catches away from tying Marvin Harrison for 3rd. So pretty soon it's going to be Jerry Rice, Tony Gonzalez, and Larry Fitzgerald. And then he is 18 yards away from passing Andre Johnson for 10th all-time in receiving yards. So
that was the other one I saw.
Larry Fitzgerald is becoming a legend.
Talking about NFL records real quick. Khalil Mack this week, what is it? A sack, a forced fumble, an interception, and a touchdown? Was it? He was the first.
And did he recover the fumble?
And a fumble
too?
recovery. Yeah, he was like the first or third or something player like in NFL history to achieve that.
Yep.
I did see that.
Wow.
And was it Tyreek? No, not Tyreek Hill. Somebody had like a return for a touchdown.
Oh, the guy from Kansas City.
Yeah,
Tyreek
Hill.
Tyreek Hill
Had a return for a touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown.
Yep.
Which was one of the...
Just records everywhere.
Yeah.
Brady got 60,000 and win 200.
That's the one I saw. I knew somebody had a passing something. Yeah, Brady was the one that I saw.
All right. Well, that's our show because I want to get out of here and watch the Packers. Okay? Thank you guys so much for listening. Go to mysports.com for some awesome videos and articles.
Yes.
Written by the coach himself. And this has been saying Tyreek, or what's his name? Tyrod Taylor. He's still not the answer. He's still not the answer.